Greetings everyone and welcome back here to the Dracovin Empire. I hope you're ready to dive back into Ravenloft. Yes, we're heading back to the Demiplanes of Dread to learn about one of the Darklords. Well, a fallen Darklord. So join me, Candace Naravan and Dracovin, as I guide you through the mists, into the darkness, in the heart of horror and madness, to Ravenloft. Yes, welcome back. We've passed through the mists, and we're heading to Darkon. Now, from 5th edition, we know that Darkon is no longer ruled by its once great ruler, Azalin Rex. Let's learn about who Azalin Rex was. And here are some sources for you, if you wish to dive deeper in yourself. For one of them is From the Shadows, from 2nd edition. I would definitely recommend that. It's an adventure all about one of the major story elements of Azalin Rex. Similarly speaking, the campaign setting Domains and Denizens is a very good book. Now, if you want to go for something a little bit more modern, the 3rd edition, third party, Gazetteer Volume 2, from Sword and Sorcery, for Ravenloft, is actually a decent source. Now, to preface this, wasn't done by Wizards, wasn't done by TSR. It was handed off to someone else who basically had control of it for a while. Okay. They did reference a lot of material from the older editions. So it isn't necessarily a terrible thing, because they basically had the permission to use Ravenloft stuff. Keep that in mind. Granted, some of that stuff might not be as canon as it was. Or so you'd think, but a certain something mentioned in 3rd edition, cough cough, the Hour of Ascension, is mentioned in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, where we talk about Darkon as it is post-Azalin. We'll dive into all of this, but keep in mind that's why these 4 sources are the ones that I've used today, and the ones that I would recommend you. Alright, so, who is Azalin Rex, or the Rex as he's known as? Who was he? He was the Wizard King of Darkon, one of the Darklords of the Demiplanes of Dread, of course. He was a draconian ruler, and subjected his people to absolute rule. If you would look at him, well, you might not know that he is undead. He resembles something more akin to a skeleton or mummy, if you would see his true appearance. He is in fact a lich, a very powerful one. But every day, when you just meet him, he maintains a very powerful illusion of being alive, closely mimicking his basically late-in-life persona. An elderly man with aliquine features, a piercing gaze, unkempt dark hair topped by a heavy iron crown. But he could alter his appearance as much as he'd want. This does sometimes prove an issue because basically any artist could make any appearance of him because he can alter his image as he wants. We know his true name, though. We'll learn about it in a minute here when we learn about his history. But from Castle Avernus, he ruled over Darkon. And statistically, if you want to go back to the closest statistics we have to 5th edition, in the 3rd edition book he was challenge rating 3, and an 18th level wizard. It's still 3rd edition, it's still 3rd party. But I would say it's relatively accurate to a Darklord. And being one as powerful and dangerous as Azalin Rex was. Let's dive into his history. The man, the myth, the legend. Azalin is more a title than a name, but it's a title he took when he came to Ravenloft. His name on where he came from was Firin Zalhonin. He was born in Nurl, a city-state in Falnis, on the coast continent of Oerk, in the world of Oerth. If you don't know what Oerth is, it is the planet of Greyhawk. Yeah. Similar to Toril is the planet of Forgotten Realms, with Faerun as a continent on it. Oerk is a certain continent on Oerth, and he was a man born there. He was the second of 3 sons of the Lord there. But his political future was basically dim from birth. He was kind of overlooked. He had keen intelligence, a distaste for fellow man, especially when they deviated from discipline and order. He believed heavily in those 2 things, discipline and order. And he had a revulsion for those that didn't go against him, and could turn to some self-loathing occasionally for his own perceived weaknesses. He respected his father's strict rulership, but prior to any kind of claim of succession exercised by his older brother, Ranald, basically, he turned against his father. So he put himself out of the line of succession because he really disliked his father being superstitious and actually having bans for magic within their earldom. In a display of rebellion, Firin entered the underworld of Nurl's mages and began stuttering under a wizard named Quantarius. He still had that desire for control of others, of himself. He was very quick to angry outbursts, and would come to regret those decisions later, sometimes quick decisions too. Even into becoming a lich in the future and being a ruler, he still have these outbursts and basically act quickly without thinking very often. And he demanded fealty and promising order, but secretly and constantly basically frustrated that the people under him were just falling and failing constantly. The only family member he actually loved was his younger brother, Urk. Farron was quick to anger, slow to forgive, and Urk was the opposite. Farron pursued knowledge, but he also displayed an inability or arrogance and repercussions of the knowledge he did. And this would lead to the death of his brother. He summoned a demon. It broke loose from his power and killed her at the tender age of 15. His father banished Quantarius from the city, blaming him for all this. Firin basically chose to follow into exile and continue his studies. He learned magics from any mage that he could be mastered under, and he basically also learned how to steal the life force from others, to read minds, to steal magical information, and learn new spells with thought. He became very powerful as a spellcaster. But he would not be away from his home forever, because his older brother Ranald died. Dissolute and gluttonous, Firin returned home. His brother dead in a display that was unbefitting them, and took the seat of power as the Azalin, or Wizard King. He reversed the decline that his earldom had suffered under Ranald's reign, returning to economic and military significance. Magic became part of Nurl's daily life. Now he did swear allegiance to the distant Malachite throne of the Great Kingdom, but he had military campaigns against surrounding tribes, added to the holdings. He had prosperity and growth, but also violence and dissonance from the conquered tribes. It was finally when he was 60, he was married. His life-extending spells were starting to fail, and he needed an heir. He had a loveless marriage that took 18 years, by the time he was 78, to produce a son, with some saying his wife even used magical wards to try to prevent that. Alessa, his wife, died in childbirth, cursing him. Firin named his son Urk after his brother. And his son inherited a lot of that brother's kindness and generosity, and didn't really want to follow in the harsh footsteps of his father. Firin saw weakness here. Eventually Urk was caught trying to free political prisoners, and Firin was faced with choice. Pardon his son or kill him. And in his symbol of his own strictness to his own laws, he not only executed his son, he wielded the blade himself. Yeah, pretty damn dark there. This act, in the strictest of rule, was a big impression on citizens, but he was plagued with doubts over these actions. So, having lost an heir, he needed some way to live forever. Perhaps maybe even bringing his son back from the dead, train him anew. He understood his failure as a father. And some dark and nameless forces basically presented him with the secret of lichdom. Yay, lichdom! He shred his mortality, and changed his title to Azalin, officially, ruling for more than 60 years after that. During this time, it became a major power in the region, even daring to renounce his fealty to the Malachite throne. His military and trade powers began to infringe on territories of surrounding kingdoms, who sought ways to eliminate him. His assassins and armies seemed unable to top it. But his downfall would come from the minor tribes he defeated very early on in his reign. He was lured from his defenses with the promise of a new magical spell that could allow a mage to truly restore life to a corpse. Blinded by hopes of restoring his son. Remember, he is an arcane spellcaster. He's trying to find a way of resurrecting using arcane magic, not divine. Not relying on the petty gods. And their promises, that they could resist him. And this blind hope drove him and his retinue of guards into an ambush by mercenaries. He fled, and headed into some dense fog, never to see more again. And so, he has cried upon Raven. In Barovia, for fact. The inhabitants there called him Azalin upon hearing his name. He continues his quest for knowledge. Terrored by several local boyars in search of magical texts, he discovered something similar to a life restoration spell he sought, but whether he could learn it all was unclear. The moment he entered Barovia, he could not learn magic. He was cursed by his life. But he drew the attention of Barovia's lord, Strahd von Zarovich. Trapped here, suffering from unable to learn new spells, he entered an uneasy alliance with Strahd. He instructed Strahd in magic arts and helped him with his experiments, which were aimed for returning him to his own plane. He had the vampire learn and cast spells that he devised but could not master because of his curse here. He invented bone golems, zombie golems during this time. They attempted to break the misty borders of Barovia and escape using an apparatus he designed. They arrived in an outworld of Mordant. Some results of this were Strahd splitting into two beings, battling amongst themselves, eventually kind of in the attempts to destroy each other, drawing him and Azalin back into the Demiplanes of Dread, and forcing Mordant to join it too. Yeah. We experimented, we almost got free. Hey, you who's a lord, turns out, not as easy to escape as me, but I need you because I can't learn the spells that I've devised. Someone else to cast them. To use my device. Yeah. After this incident, the relationship between them strayed even further. Mordant appeared on the borders of Barovia. Aslan deduced that the borders of Ravenloft could hold other lands, and that he could go away from Strahd's authority. So he left into the mists, and emerged in Darklord. And now is when we listen to one of the curses of Darkon, which, I'm questioning whether this curse exists as much anymore. That's a good question. I think most of the curse that was once upon this land has disappeared with Aslan's disappearance. By the time, a traveling wizard named Firin appeared while an undead lich-like creature named Darklords materialized in the central castle. Avernus. Firin was just and good. He sought out to basically defeat Darklords and confront him. And it was just like with Strahd, split in two, in Morton. So friends stumbled apart in Darkon with amnesia, and until he defeated Darklords, he did not remember what he was. He merged with his undead essence, and was made Azalin again. He basically realized that he wasn't really a fan of being undead either, it was just part of being immortal. So, he had almost had a chance to be mortal again, and basically now he was also not once again undead, but also had to rule this place. So, people that would come here would lose memories. And from his castle Avernus, he housed the Book of Names, a tome that recorded the true memories as they were lost. Again, another thing that's possibly lost here is going to be gone. So he ruled Darkon, created a secret police, which still does exist to today, tried to invade Barovia, didn't work, tried that, and it interferes with another one of the Falconia, put that to an end. His rule over Darkon was, though, absolute. Political, military, everything under him. Ruthless law. But he still presented himself as a moral king. And basically artificially made his citizens docile, thanks to false memories. Yeah. So, he did do a lot to try to continue to expand his borders, but it just didn't work. So now he tried something else. To escape from Ravenloft. And now we get into the two deeply known attempts, and the third, maybe successful attempt. Talk about that one in a minute. The first time was the Grand Conjunction. He basically sent heroes back in time to steal an artifact that was related to the formation of Ravenloft. He split open the demiplane, freeing its Darklords once again, but he hated Strahd. It was his undoing. He returned to face Strahd, and it gave the heroes a chance to reverse the Grand Conjunction and reform Ravenloft once more. There were some Darklords that escaped, but Azalin and Strahd were not amongst their numbers. They were too busy fighting each other. Another side project was to circumvent him's magical curse. He basically impregnated some women with clones of himself, and then had those clones grow up learning magical knowledge, and he would harvest the knowledge from them when they would reach adulthood, basically using their tutelage to give him magical brain. They're me. Yeah, the experiment failed. But he did create a clone son of sorts that would become much more important in the future. So, yeah. He also then spent 10 years creating a doomsday device that would turn him to a demi-lich and allow his immaterial essence to escape. The idea being, of course, a more controlled lich. The device turned his clone son, Lorwyn, into a negative planar elemental known as Death. Thumbs up. So, and the second full application he called the Requiem, killing all life in Il-Alp, the capital city, and scattering his essence across the plane of Darkon. He remained in that state for 5 years before he pulled himself together, taking over the corpse of his son, which had been lying in Castle Avernus for 200 years. Urk's spirit was still haunting that, and basically now just is basically reminding him of, don't do that, Dad! You already murdered me and done a lot of bad things. So he's trying to get his father to redeem, but, Aslan's a dick, and he's been that way for, 300 years, maybe. It's not a very easy thing for his poor son to try to fix up. So, his absence, his former capital, was an Acropolis ruled by Death. His secret police, lieutenants ran amok. Mortal agents loyal to him have failed to foil usurpation attempts by level leaders, and also that by Death. So now he's back in charge of Darkon, as of the end of 3rd edition, centralizing his power, eliminating rebels, and making his necropolis his lordship again, basically keeping his powers. Now, let's talk about those powers for a second, and then talk about post-3rd edition into 4th edition. Because there are some large changes that occur. And Remember, if you saw my previous video on the Darklords, you'll know that the Demiplanes of Dread, the essence of them has changed, and these massive experiments and magical effects that Azalin himself did probably has reinvigorated the way that the Demiplanes work. Originally, they were bordered to each other to a degree. Granted, you would have to leave through the mists to travel to another, and that was oftentimes deadly, especially without a Darklord's permission. But as they are now, they are very separate. What are they? Places like the carnival still connected, no? Maybe they aren't so separate as they are, as you'd think, though more than they used to. So Azalin did a lot of experiments. He did recover some limited ability to expand his knowledge, even so slightly, by forming new magic, as long as it was strongly related to knowledge he already had. The process took very long, though, much longer than human age. It also gathered several salient powers, including the ability to look into minds, to alter the memories of anybody in Darkon. His control over undeath was absolute, and he had no limit on the number that he could control. And spellcasting was second to none. His phylactery was an enormous golden dragon skull, almost as immovably heavy as it appeared. It was also near indestructible. His dependence to it, though, hard to say. Some said that if it was destroyed, he'd be killed instantly. Others implied he'd survive as long as his body was not destroyed. But, like many liches, his true name was very much protected by him. As specialized spells that related to true names, such as in earlier editions Trapped Soul, requires that true name. So, we know his true name. Others did not. He commissioned many scholars. He continually tried to escape Ravenloft. He tried to undo methods of magical bonds for various other Darklords and see if that would work for himself then. To avoid these dark powers that are driving and creating the Darklords. He experimented a lot. But of course, as I said, his inability to learn magic, it just slowed him down so much. And that's where we get into the Hour of Ascension. It's a time mentioned in 3rd edition. The 3rd edition Ravenloft book, they talk about it. It's something mentioned in Darkon's lore as a heralded time when the dead will rise and form the Great Realms and reclaim Darkon. What does that mean when we look to 5th edition? And the Hour Ascension. He orchestrated the magical events that shook the domain, and he vanished, and Darkon changed. What is the Hour Ascension? What happened to Azalin Rex? Honestly, it's something we don't know. We might never know. With the way that 5th edition is, I don't know if we'd visit this storyline of Azalin Rex disappearing from Darkon. We're already beyond it. We have Van Richten's guide that gives us enough information of what's going on now. And a look into the past might not be important. But the Hour of Ascension, what it was, and what happened, occurred. Memories return. Azalin is gone. Darkon fades slowly. But not instantly. It's dying very slowly. Is part of Darkon still there? Etched into this place just by a little bit. His inheritors are trying to take over, become the new Dark. But can they really replace a being with such power as Azalin Rex? That's a question we may never know. But for now, I will say, that's Azalin Rex. A very powerful spellcaster, and very powerful lich. Is he actually free from Darkon? Is his essence merged with it? Is something else happening? We don't really know. And again, we may never know exactly. We know that the plane he was connected to has altered dramatically over 3 massive events that basically altered the essence of the Demiplanes of Dread. His attempts to break them and break free altered things heavily. He constantly tried to do that. Incredibly powerful magics that break the dark powers hold over the Darklords and allow them freedom. But those effects mean that Ravenloft has changed completely. If we assume the Hour of Ascension affected all of Ravenloft, all the Denizens, perhaps some of the changes and consistency changes that have occurred between 2nd, 3rd, and now 5th edition could be explained. The Hour of Ascension, a great thing, freeing one Dark, could have repercussions in so many other places. Change history, time. You do recall, his first attempt was to alter history, alter time. That's a major blow. Something that allowed weakness to break. Time alteration? Powers that go beyond the dark powers. So much of it is questionable about what he actually did. But it's a reason I wanted to talk about him. He is related to a lot of what shaped current Ravenloft. If you take the lore as straightforward in 5th edition, you don't pick up on that. But if you understand the full lore between the various editions, understand that they are connected. 3rd edition, as much as it is seemingly forgotten, because it was a third-party Ravenloft, the concept of the Hours of Ascension came through there. Keep that in mind. That's why all those old stories, all those old books are still important. They still tell of the tale of Ravenloft. And Azalin Rex is deeply tied to that. That'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed joining me. Remember to do all the various support things, whether you're on Twitch or YouTube, liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, following, all that kind of stuff. My question today is, have you done any adventures in Darkhold? And what do you think of my idea? Granted, there is a little bit of my own personal ideas in this entire thing, but I'm bringing that entire thought of what's going on here, and we can see by terminology, things are connected. What does this mean? What does this spell out? There are questions that we ask that we will probably never know. Maybe if there is in the future, like 10 or 20 years from now, a 6th edition, well, that's 10 years from now, 6th edition D&D, an actual 6th edition, and we get a 6th edition Ravenloft, maybe they'll answer something there. I don't know. Or maybe Wizards will decide, hey, we could do another Ravenloft, and come up with something interesting that talks about some of this stuff. Changes, evolution. What is the Demiplanes? But until that day, we'll stay. I have social media link below. Check those out. Discord, Twitter /X. I give all the schedule for my week, everything going on. Big shout-outs, I will say, is check out my live play of some TTRPGs. Crimson Queen Wednesdays at 8, and Discussing K-Pop Saturdays at 6. Everything else, make sure to check out my schedule and know what's going on. But until the next time, we chat about Ravenloft, another topic, and dive back into either the Demiplanes of Dread or somewhere else. Just as we I bid you adieu, and very